The meaning of life. It's a big question. In fact, it's probably the biggest of all. Through the ages, so many people have asked and really only scratched the surface or offered their own interpretations. So I too can only offer my own interpretation and my opinion. But we can break up the question into its terms, into its words. So take meaning. What does meaning mean? If we mean by meaning purpose, then most would agree that relationships, to a very large extent, define meaning. But because there's suffering in this world, there's loneliness, there's pain, because relationships are imperfect, they end, people are imperfect, life ends. The conclusion for some is that life is meaningless. Now, are they saying that for something to have purpose and ultimate meaning, it would have to be good and true, trustworthy, actually perfect, and eternal, not subject to an end? For it does seem true that a thing that ends ultimately is meaningless. The second word is life. What is it? When we think of code, program code, we immediately know as programmers that there was someone behind that code. Of course, we wouldn't for a second try to postulate that no one was behind the code, that it typed itself. Also, if we wanted to know the purpose of a website, or a language, or a framework, we would need to ask the author of that language, or the writer of a book, or the founder of a website. For Teach Yourself Python, or for teaching computing or test and track, you'd have to ask me. Now, you could interpret the purpose of a thing to the best of your knowledge, but it would just be your best guess. We do need to ask the author, to consult the documentation. Take a framework like Flask. If you saw the bits of the framework and bits of code, you wouldn't have a clue. The documentation would be key. And Python, take the language. Well, who was behind it? Van Rossum. He would be able to tell you everything that it is and what it was designed for. And then we consider the word life in the meaning of life. Now, the DNA in our cells is nothing but code, but extremely and terribly more complex, infinitely more confounding and amazing than the comparatively simple code we write to create a website. So is there someone behind this life code, behind the code that is the structure of this universe? Famous computer scientists like Konrad Zuse postulated that the world is actually a simulation, potentially a binary simulation, created. Charles Babbage, who's credited with being the inventor of the computer, spent much of his life arguing for the presence of a higher programmer, a god, in a world which was rapidly rejecting God. He argued for a designer and a doer of miracles, life itself being a miracle. So here comes the real response to the question, what is the meaning of life? We have to actually ask another question. Is there someone behind this life and the universe? If the answer is no, the gravity of accepting this answer is unimaginable. For one, in a wholly deterministic universe where there was no provision for free will, or a creator granting his creatures the dignity of causality, you could never even be sure of the question you were asking. And if there was no meaning to be found, how can we ask about meaning? So the real question seems to be, is there someone behind it all, behind the code? But consider this, if there's no designer, there's no purpose. If there's no purpose, there's no meaning. If there's no meaning, well, what's the point? Some would argue, we make the point. Each one of us can make our own morality, reality, seek our own glory, seek our own truth, make our own truth. So the first question seems to be, is there a who? Someone behind it all, someone behind the code of life, DNA, the universe? And if so, who is that who? Many would say who is equal to God. And then, can we know that God? If we can, then I can know the answer. But if I cannot, I cannot. If there is a God outside our box, the creator of it all, surely he would be too unfathomable, too great to reveal himself to a creature in this world. It would overwhelm us. If he revealed himself in all his glory, we would be forced to worship. But religions seem to be all about messengers that come into the world claiming to present a view of God. So which messenger do we believe? Is there anyone who has ever existed in history who has claimed to be perfect, good, true, unconditionally loving, providing us with a relationship that we can trust, giving their life, not taking or demanding, granting eternal life? Again, this will take a careful search through history. Every figure, every messenger, every account of every person. Is there anyone who fits this description? How can we know which message to trust? We must first know and trust the messenger. And really, we are looking for God on earth. And we're looking for that God to be good, true, eternal, and loving. But these are only my thoughts. Surely the meaning of life and the meaning of the universe is a meaning we must all find for ourselves.